Hi, thank you very much for assisting us in this project. This is the crown of thorns starfish, and as its name implies, it's covered with a crown of thorns, and these spikes at the top are very, very sharp, so you run a risk of having a puncture wound. On the outside of each one of those spines is slime that has a toxin in it, so if you get stabbed by it, you're going to have a painful experience for a few days, and double check that if you do get stabbed, there's no spine snapped off, because you have to take them out. If you did get spiked, the best thing to do is immediately go wash your hands with soap and water and use some antiseptic. You're not going to stop the wound for like 2 days or 3 days. It's painful, it's going to be inflamed, but it should settle down. If you get badly stabbed, you probably need to go see a doctor and get an antibiotic treatment to prevent any infections from the bacteria on the animal. The idea is to avoid getting stabbed by this animal. So when you're in the water collecting it, you can either collect it, this is a 3-part hand spear, you probably have something on the boat. You can stab the animal and keep it away from you before you get it into the boat, and most importantly, if you're using a spear, make sure it's one that the animal, when you're going up, doesn't slide down and impale your hand. Or if you wish, wear a pair of canvas gloves, but be aware that if you hit that very hard, you'll still be punctured through this glove. But the most important thing is avoid getting stabbed. I've been stabbed a few times, you'll survive it, but it's best to avoid it. So you need to take these gloves off later, probably to get the samples. We'll be showing you how to do it. So what we're trying to do is what we have, we heard of the human genome, we have sequenced the genome of this animal, which allows us to do some science now to demonstrate some aspects of its biology which we never do before. So basically what we're doing is like Ancestry.com. We're trying to find out where the parents come from and where the offspring go to. And that's what we can do with these samples. So thank you very much for helping us in this project. You will receive in the post package from Australian Coast like this. It's like this, posted to your site wherever you are, and in there will be a sampling box. And in that sampling box, it's sealed. You'll have a set of test tubes, blue cap ones, red ones, and yellow ones, and I'll go through what that's about in a minute. There's a recording sheet, which on one side will be for the COTS, and we want you to record. There needs to be 2 samples per animal, so we ideally would like 25 animals. There'll be 2 tubes per animal, so you would go there and get 2 tubes for each animal. So there'll be 50 tubes for 25 animals. And you record the date, the name of the reef if there's one, and also the latitude and longitude, and any other details you might want to add. So that's the crown of thorns starfish samples, and I'll come to the purpose of the other samples in a minute. And you can put your sampling page there. You'll also get in here some sampling kits, such as some dishes to collect the sample we want, as well as a sampling equipment. There'll be a scissors for chopping the arms off, a forceps, and a small pair of scissors for getting the tube feet. Here's your pencil for recording on the waterproof paper. We'll also put in there a USB stick with this video, so you know you watch this video on YouTube, but on the boat or whatever, if you want to have a look at it again to remind you how to do it, have a look at the video. So I'll show you how we wanted the samples collected. When you can do it 2 ways. You can either bring the animal, the COTS, up the bottom and put it in the boat and do the whole animal in the boat. And there's an alternative way to do this by not bringing the animal up in the boat. But if you bring it up into the boat like this, the most important thing is not to get stabbed by these very sharp spines, which we recovered in a minute. You can see when it's alive like that, they're very rigid and it's very easy to get a puncture wound. So if you bring the whole animal in, either use a prong spear like that to stab the animal so it can't slide down, because if you're holding it up and slides down, you're going to get injured. Just keep it away from your body. We don't have If you have some sort of long tongs, you can also grab the animal, bring it up to the boat. Here it is. It's dangerous in this mode, facing up like that, because you're at threat to get a puncture wound. So you want to flip it over. And when it's flipped over, you can touch it with your bare hand. Don't get impaled, it's not as dangerous in this form as it is when it's upright. So flip it over with your hand. But collecting the tube feet from a live animal like this, you may want to try using these plastic Petri dishes here, because the tube feet will like to stick to things. So that might make an easy way of collecting. They may or may not stick to the plastic. If they do, you're in luck. You can... It's not working terribly well, but that's what we're after. We're after some of these tube feet. And you would put them into a container. You can see that not very many are... Well, there's a... And that's about how much material we would need. So that's one way of doing it. They sometimes stick to things, sometimes they do not. But you would get your tubes, and there'll be a fixative fluid in there, about 8 mils. And then you would get your sample. Efficiently here, but probably would have to edit this a bit. And then it's important to get the tube feet in the solution that's in the thing. So just knock it down so it's inside the fluid. Just make sure they're all in. So that's one vial. There'll be a label on this. Put that in and then do it again. Now the other way, if they don't stick, the other way of doing it is literally just grabbing the feet and cutting off some material. You can get in sort of and pull up and cut. So then you get your second sample, and each sample we're trying to get about the size of a small green garden pea. And then you get the second vial and repeat. And again, make sure it's in the fluid so it's inside the tube nicely. And that's it. That can remain at room temperature, not in direct sunlight. If you can put it in the refrigerator, fantastic. If not, so be it. Now, that sampling technique means you can put that animal back in the water if you wish to, if you're not trying to kill the animal. The other way to do it, but there is a risk when you capture it bringing in the boat, that someone might get a puncture wound from the crown-of-thorns starfish. The other way to do it then is just when you're in the water, You find an animal, you flip it upside down like that when you're in the water, and then wearing your dive gloves, there'll be a forceps in your package. You would just simply cut a couple of limbs off. Again, I would be wearing your dive gloves at this point when you're doing this in water. You should be having dive gloves when you're diving, but just to make sure you don't slip and get hurt. Now, in your bag, you're going to have a series of about 5 of these. You can have that tied to your weight belt. This is a quick release cable tie, so you can get rid of it if you don't want it, but you would then just open the bag, ziplock open the bag, use this, plop it into the bag like this, and you can collect 5 samples that way. There's holes here for drainage. Just be aware that spine might be popped. So you could collect 5 animals like that and take it back to the boat. So therefore, you can leave the animal in the water like that. It's going to survive. It's not going to die that way. You can leave it in the water, or if you're trying to kill the animal, that's when you should inject it to kill it. So when you get it back on the boat, these would still be viable for a half hour or so in the water. When you get back up to the boat, you do the same thing again. Again, be careful. You may want to wear gloves. Flip it over, and then you can just chop this. I'm going to get the tongs. And again, just be aware that you can still get hurt by the spines. And then you can collect the tube feet with your forceps. This animal obviously is still sexually mature. That's gonad, the white you see there. This yellow here is a bit like their kidney or liver. Don't collect that. We don't want that contaminating. We don't want that either. We just want the tube feet. So you would go back along and collect the tube feet like we did again into a Petri dish like that. So you can do more than 2 legs. You can do more, half as many, half of the animal if you want to. But that's one way you can bring up, like 5 samples at once in these sort of containers. Be aware though, this is really reasonably thick plastic, but the spine might still pop through. So that's 2 ways. Either bring the animal up and sample, or leave the animal in the water and just collect a few legs and then deal it with the legs, 2 feet when you're back on the boat. Okay. Now that's for the crown of thorn starfish. Like we said, we want up to 25 animals as you fill in. The other organisms we would like, if possible, is this Alinkia, which is a blue starfish that you'll see, and a cushion star. And that's what these other tubes are for. So on that form you have, if you flip it over, we now have for Linkia, we just like up to 6 samples, and for the cushion star up to 5 samples. So the yellow caps here for the Linkia, yellow, and red for the cushion stars, and their samples there. So the same thing we showed you. There's a clip in there about this animal is safe to touch. These animals, you don't have to worry about being stabbed by the puncture wounds, but you're going to need to use, as we showed already, I think, a chisel to knock off the leg and chop along. You'll see tiny tube feet. If they're too difficult to take out with the forceps, really just get something to scoop like a spoon and just scoop along the length there to get the sample. And again, we would like, in this case, the Linkia, there'll be 2 sets of tubes, 2 tubes per animal. But that's only if you can do it. We're just using that as a reference. If we can do it, that would be great. And then finally, when everything's collected, and like I said, that should not be exposed to direct sun. It should be in the shade at room temperature on the boat, or In the refrigerator if you can. It's just boxed up. If you can do, pack it out with substances so things aren't flying around too much. And you'll get a self-addressed envelope. You'll have to pay for the postage. Just ship it back. So you just put the box back in there and ship it out. Now the only thing is that since the fixative in here is flammable, since it's a type of alcohol, but not safe for drinking, it's flammable, so it's not considered safe for posting. Australia Post, for example, will not post something like this because it has a fluid in it that's flammable. So right before you post it back to Ames, what you can do is go back to each vial, empty it out, pour off the fluid, not the feet, and at that point, that's a little piece of paper just to keep the area moist. That's no longer considered a flammable substance. There's too little in there. And you would pour out all the alcohol, and then you would be allowed to post this in the normal post. At the moment, you'll be receiving your packages, if we have to post it to you, by courier, because we can't do it by Australia Post. So when you finish making the collection and you have a little vial like this, or wherever you made the collection, like I said, this is a bit of like an ancestry.com, so we don't want to have the 2 feet from one organism mixing with another one. So you rinse it in seawater. You can have fresh water, great. Otherwise, just over the side of the boat, just rinse it so you make sure there's no more material left from the previous animal. Otherwise, we're going to get falsely accusing fathers or mothers that aren't the guilty party. So we would like a clean, just rinse it out. That's okay. The other species, as I said before, we would like is this blue Linkia and the cushion star, which you don't have. There'll be a photograph in the package, but if it's too difficult, leave it. But this animal, completely, so you can pick this up and do, it's not dangerous, but it's also hard as a rock. So the only way you're going to get up to 2 feet, we would suggest, and I'm not going to go through it now, but we'll probably send you a chisel, but if not, with a hammer, with a chisel, if you can have it, you're going to have to chisel down along the scent line here to open it up to get at. You can see here you can't get at the 2 feet because they're buried. So you're going to have to get something to split this down the middle. A chisel is probably the most, because this thing is, like I said, a bit of a stone. The 2 feet are much smaller than the crown of thorn starfish, so whatever you can collect, we would be grateful. But like I said, the most important thing for this study is getting 25 samples of crown of thorn starfish. This would be the icing on the cake with this and the cushion star. Fantastic if you can, but don't worry about it if you can't. Thanks.